and the Santa Barbara Local Agency Formation Commission. Can I get the clerk to please call the roll?
Commissioner Seves?
Here.
Commissioner Allen?
Here.
Commissioner Freeman?
Here.
Commissioner Geyer? Here. Commissioner Hartman?
Here.
Commissioner Lavanino?
Here.
Commissioner Sierra?
Here.
Commissioner Stark?
Here.
Commissioner Waterfield?
Here.
Commissioner Welt?
Here.
And Commissioner Williams. Let the record reflect that Supervisor Williams is absent. And I was just testing you on that one.
Good, thank you. All right, this time please stand and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the December 12th meeting?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Seves?
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman?
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman? Commissioner Welt?
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Waterfield? I'm sorry, Commissioner Waterfield, we can't hear you down here.
My mic is on.
There we go. Commissioner Waterfield? Thank you.
Aye.
And Chair Lavanino.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, next item of business is the selection of the chair and the vice chair for the 2020 Santa Barbara County LAFCO. Does anybody have any nominations they'd like to make? Supervisor Hartman.
I just had a question. Is there a pattern that we normally observe?
There is. Paul Hood, LAFCO Executive Officer. There is a rotation in your commission's handbook, and it's the public, county, special district, and city. And generally, it's the vice chairman that is selected as chairman, and then the next in line would be a city representative as the vice chair to replace our outgoing chairman, the county member.
All right, great. So who are city, he's our vice chair. Mr. Geyer would be possibly be our chair, and then it's up to, yes.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay,
Holly's an alternate.
Mr. Seves.
I'd move that our special district member Craig Geyer be appointed as chair and our city member Etta Waterfield be appointed as vice chair.
Second.
Okay. Any comments on the motion? All right, let's get a roll call.
Commissioner Seves?
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman?
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer? Commissioner Hartman? Commissioner Welt?
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield?
Aye.
Chair Lavanino.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimous.
All right, so we're going to swap out here.
Wow, getting a lot of candy here. Okay, you ready to proceed? Okay, now is the time for public comment. For members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Are there any requests?
Chair Geyer and members of the commission, we have no request to speak on general public comment today.
Okay. And the next item of business is the consent calendar. Would any commissioners like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Hearing none, consider a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I so move.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Seves?
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman? Commissioner Lavanino? Commissioner Welt?
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield?
Aye.
Chair Geyer.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimous.
Okay, the next item is business item number 1. Will the clerk please read the item into the record?
Chair Guyer and members of the commission, business item number 1 is to consider appointments to the 2020 SB LAFCO Legislative Committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief staff report. Since 2015, we have established a Santa Barbara LAFCO Legislative Committee, and the current members of the Legislative Committee are Commissioner Lavanino, Aceves, and Guyer, and that has seemed to work pretty well since we didn't have too many meetings in 2019, so I think that we were pretty much on track with that. I do anticipate that we will be meeting more often when we get legislative issues that come from Cal LAFCO or come from the legislature that we need to take a look at. And the interesting part about having a standing legislative committee is that we can call the 3 members of the standing committee to discuss items that would generally be presented to the full commission at the following meeting. So it's kind of nice to get a feel for what the legislative committee would like to see or not see in new legislation, and so that's the benefit of having a standing legislative committee made up of 3 members. And it's not a Brown Act committee because it is
yes,
a Brown Act committee, a standing committee.
Chair, yes, start.
I was going to ask, actually, Mr. Chair, if I could ask the council something. It is correct, it's a standing committee, it's subject to the Brown Act. Is the rule that allows commission members that are not members of the committee to attend as observers in effect with respect to that committee?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Mr. Stark, I think you're correct. I would probably want to reconfirm that rule because I haven't had to interpret it yet, but that would be the normal interpretation.
I would appreciate it. My understanding is there's an attorney general opinion on the subject.
I think they can attend, but I would like to confirm the AG opinion because I haven't looked at that in quite some time. So if someone's planning on attending the standing committee meeting, which would be publicly noticed, the public is invited, and if a member of the commission who's not on the committee wants to attend, if you could just give me notice. But I'll also look it up before we ever get to one of those situations.
Okay.
May I ask a question? Is there a reason why we need to have it as a standing versus an ad hoc committee?
Well, there's sort of a issue if you keep creating the same ad hoc committee every year to look at legislation. At some point, it's really a standing committee, so it's better to err on the side of caution. These meetings are, we notice them properly, we post the notice, but I've never seen a lot of community interest in it. It could change, but I think if you're gonna have a legislative committee come up every year or two and do exactly the same thing, I think that's the better approach.
Okay, I don't think this committee's met.
We did meet, but not in 2019. We met in 2018.
Yeah, so we didn't meet at all last year. My main reason for asking this is because legislation can come up at any time. And if we have to wait to notice a meeting and then have the meeting, we may not be timely. And that's why I'm suggesting that, why couldn't it be an ad hoc so that if we have an immediate response that's required to get to the board in a timely fashion, we don't want to lose the opportunity of the board being able to discuss pending legislation that's important to this commission.
And that's a fair point, and it could be an issue at some point. The notice would be the standard posting of an agenda by the clerk's office. That's a 72-hour notice for a meeting, and I suspect, although I haven't looked this up recently, but you could also hold a special meeting of an ad hoc committee, which is only 24 hours.
But with an ad hoc, you don't have to post it.
Correct. Ad hoc's not subject to the
And that's what
Brown
I'm talking about. If the executive had a phone call from the state saying, "Hey, this is coming up. We didn't know about it. Do you have time to get it to your board?" Well, first he has to take to the committee, and if it's an ad hoc, it can be basically immediate. Whereas if it's not, then we have to notice and wait and lose time.
That's true, but there's no, I just, technical point, not to disagree with what you just said. If there is not time to go to the standing committee, Mr. Hood could just decide to take it to the full commission and bypass the committee. You missed the advantage of maybe having 3 members get up to speed on it before the meeting, but there, it does not stop Mr. Hood from taking something straight to the commission for a full hearing.
Commissioner Hartman?
Oh, this issue has come up at the Board of Supervisors, and Supervisor Lavanino may know this as well as I, but we've been told 6 months is about the longest you can have an ad hoc committee. Otherwise, it really is a standing committee, and it can't be seen as a way of evading notice requirements.
Okay, so we ask for volunteers? Or do you just want to continue on with the same committee?
I'll continue.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Roger Welton, Santa Maria. I'd like to make the motion that the current committee, the incumbents, roll over to the next year, this year.
Is there a second?
Second. Second.
Yeah.
You can't hear me.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
We'll do
Roll
that.
call vote.
Commissioner Seves?
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman? Commissioner Lavanino? Commissioner Welt?
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield?
Aye.
And Chair Guyer.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimous.
Okay, the next item is information item number 1. Read this into the record.
Chair Guyer and members of the Commission, informational item number 1 is to receive and file a report on the SB LAFCO City and Special District Commissioner selection process.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. It seems like we just went through this process not too long ago, particularly with the special district selection. But we do have some terms that are expiring, and it's the director from the Goleta West Sanitary District, Commissioner Guyer, and the Santa Ynez Water Conservation District, Cynthia Allen. Both of these terms expire on May 1st, 2020, and both serve until they are replaced or reelected. And the process for the special districts is that we did a mailed ballot election because there were 38 special districts, and in the past we had a somewhat hard time getting a quorum of the special districts. And so I decided, and you may want to discuss this if you wish, to hold a mail ballot election and have a 30 to 60 day nomination period. And this may in fact go past the March 1st deadline. But again, if commissioners continue to serve until they're replaced or reappointed. And so then after the nomination period, we will prepare a ballot and mail that out, and again have a 30 to 60 day, probably closer to a 60 day election where the ballots will be mailed back in to the executive officer and then presented to the commission. And we also have at the same time a city commissioners. The Councilman Aceves' term expires on March 1st, 2020, and Buellton Mayor Holly Sierra's term also expires. This is a little bit less of an issue in having 8 cities and mayors and city council members meet on a regular basis at Air Pollution Control and SB CAG. And so in the past, it's been relatively easy to take a recess, or at time of a recess, convene the councilman, the mayors, or their designee to hold the election. So that's less of a need to do a mail ballot. It's generally done fairly quickly, and whoever might be interested would be selected to continue. So that is something that I will keep the commission posted on, apprised of, particularly with the special districts, and we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it doesn't last as long as the last election did. Although I think that the special districts gained a considerable amount of knowledge about LAFCO by participating in this process, and I had some very positive comments from the special districts. So that, unless there's any questions, that concludes my comments.
Okay, any questions from the commission? Okay, if not, we'll move on to information item number 2. Read that into the record.
Chair Guyer and members of the commission, informational item number 2 is to receive and file a report on the commission's audited financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. This is a continuing process. The commission did sign an engagement letter with Bartlett, Pringle, and Wolf in 2018, and we agreed to have a continuing relationship with them. We were informed by the managing partner, John Britton, that there was state legislation that the primary responsibility for conducting the audit needs to be moved around between partners. And so he assigned a Tracy Solomon, who is one of the partners in the firm. And she in turn selected James Lewis to help her, who in turn selected Kimberly Hopper to help her. And Kimberly is a bulldog, I tell you. She is requesting a lot more information. I've been spending literally hours on complying with the request for information, comparing one fiscal year to the next, and trying to explain the LAFCO budget. And how that works is that we are funded by the county, the cities, and the special districts 1/3 each, and that sometimes our budgets vary depending on county, the cap costs, the countywide overhead costs. And I think that we as LAFCO and LAFCO officials know more about the countywide overhead process than most CPAs know about it, because it's very difficult to explain. But I think we're on track, and I think we're getting ready to come back at the February 6th meeting with a final outside audit that I'm hoping and have great faith in the fact that we're performing above the level of adequacy and way beyond that in how we conduct the fiscal affairs of LAFCO. Haven't had any problems, any questions that point out anything that we're not doing. So I think that we will come back at the February meeting and have a final report for you. We'll ask one of the partners to come in and explain the report as well.
Commissioner Stark?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm curious. It seems to me, I have a lot of confidence in our fiscal stability, but it occurs to me we might be paying for the learning curve on the part of the bottom level auditor. Or do we get charged a single fee, or do we have to pay by the hour? I mean, I think they should hire somebody that knows about the cap system.
There's a set fee that we've budgeted for, and they know what the fee is. I believe it's $5,500 or $6,000 for the whole audit.
Oh.
And I think that's pretty reasonable. It's not based on an hourly rate. The people that do the work are probably billing at a lower rate, but when they're reviewed by the partners, they know more about the process than the lower echelon people that are collecting the information. And I try and explain it to them when we go through the response.
Oh, so we're getting a fair shake financially, which is my okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner questions or
How do you move,
comments?
Vince?
I actually had that very same question, because Mr. Britton's been doing ours for years, and now he's passing it down the chain. And the whole idea, I would hope, is to save money at the end of the road. So I hope that this gets communicated to Mr. Britton as far as the educating his staff, when actually it should be internalized since they know our business and they've been doing it. And the whole idea is to save us money. So I'm a bit concerned that we are educating a person who has not done it before, but the firm has done it for many years.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, we'll move on to information item number 3. Read that into the record.
Chair Guyer and members of the commission, informational item number 3 is to receive and file a report on the 2019 through 2020 commission activities.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I did take this opportunity, since we had a fairly light meeting. I don't want to carry it on into the late afternoon, but I did want to summarize some of the activities of LAFCO during 2019 and kind of give a little perspective on 2020. As I mentioned in the staff report, I think the commission has had some changes on the commission as far as membership, and this is an appropriate time to review the activities for the past year and planned activities for the coming year. In 2019, the commission held 9 public meetings, and as you know, we alternate between Santa Barbara and Santa Maria, and a lot of times we have commissioners in both locations, and we look at a wide variety of issues. In addition, your staff attended quite a few meetings covering subjects of countywide and local interest, and in this report I'll kind of highlight the activities. I'm not going to include everything that your commission had on its agenda. You have the agendas are on the website, and you receive copies of them. And so basically what we did today was select the chair and vice chair for 2019. That was in January 3rd. We looked at the Thompson Sphere of Influence revision and annexation to the Carpinteria Sanitary District, made appointments to the Legislative Committee, and we looked at the Cal LAFCO white paper called Creating Sustainable Communities and Landscapes, and we reviewed the audit that we just talked about. And we had commissioner elections and appointments. You'll see a recurring theme about the elections and appointments throughout the months. And we also looked at appointment of LAFCO legal counsel. We were contracting with county counsel's office, but your commission and staff were interested in looking beyond that and independently hiring an independent legal counsel. The oath of office for county member, alternate member Doss Williams was administered in February, and we had an agreement between LAFCO and William Dillon, who's sitting to my right, for the professional legal services. We approved again the 17-18 financial audit by Bartlett, Pringle, and Wolf. And we looked at a report on LAFCO's agricultural and open space policies and appointed an ad hoc committee. And we had, I think it was 4 or 5 meetings of the ad hoc committee met in Commissioner Hartman's office several times in Solvang. And again, we had a report on elections and appointments for city, county, and special district members. We administered the oath of office to newly appointed alternate city member Holly Sierra. And I presented a report on future staffing options for LAFCO, which I've done several times. Should I leave the commission's executive officer? I'm not planning on doing that, by the way, and there's some options as far as full staff. What? Bill said I'm never leaving, so we had an agreement between LAFCO and myself for continued services. And again, the report was on the elections and appointments of city, county, and special districts. And then we had a staff workshop in San Jose, 2019. We always present to you the proposed budget in April. This was for 2019-2020. And then I have presented an agreement between LAFCO and myself for executive officer services that goes through June 30th, 2022. In May 2nd meeting, we had the final budget that was approved, and we had a status report on Los Olivos Community Services District and a report on the agricultural and open space policies from the ad hoc committee. Based on the final budget, the county auditor sends out billings to the county, the 8 cities and the special districts, 38 special districts, and they pay a proportional share of the budget. The county pays 1/3 of the budget. City's allocation is based on the amount of revenues that each of the 8 cities, the city with the largest revenue pays the most of the 1/3. And then again, the special districts do the same thing. Again, we had a report on special district commissioners' elections because we'd already appointed the county and the city representatives. And I reported back on the Cal LAFCO staff workshop, which was held in San Jose. And looking back on July 11th, we administered the oath of office to alternate special district member Cynthia Allen. We had the Tate annexation, the San Ynez Community Services District, which was in Janin Acres. And I've highlighted the Janin Acres annexations. We had the formation of the San Antonio Basin Water District, which was a fairly significant formation of a district that's 82,000 acres. And we had an out-of-agency agreement with the city of Santa Maria for the St. Marie Mobile Home Park development. Again, we reviewed the ag and open space policies and recommended revisions from the ad hoc committee were presented to the commission, and it was the policies were amended with minimal changes, requiring that we have an MOA, if possible, between the annexing city and the county that sets up zoning requirements within if it's agricultural land. And then we had an out-of-agency service agreement that was signed by the chairman for an area that had a failing septic tank in Janin Acres again. And again, reports on the special district commission elections. The election was finally solved, and the selection of Jay Freeman was made in September 5th. Glad to have Jay on the commission. An out-of-agency service agreement was approved by your commission for the San Ynez Community Services District, again in Janin Acres. And we had a report on the proposed new Cal LAFCO dues structure that received a large amount of attention from the commission and from the voting delegates that attended the Cal LAFCO annual conference. And the dues were approved. There was I think it was 28 in for, 10 against, and 10 absent. Then I reported back on the Cal LAFCO annual conference, which was held in Sacramento. And then we had a report on the formation of the San Antonio Basin District, Water District. And October 3rd, the commission approved the formation, directed county elections to conduct the landowner voter election for the formation of the district, approved the ballot measure for the district that will appear on the ballot, and we prepared the impartial analysis, and that was approved by the commission. Then I reported back on the conference. December 12th, we approved the location and schedule of meeting dates. Reported on the annual conference again because it ended on November 1st, so we had a discussion of that. Reported on Cal LAFCO board elections. We had a candidate for election who unfortunately was not elected, City Commissioner Waterfield. We reported back on the dues structure, reported on the election for the San Antonio Basin Water District, which is going to be in April and would be a mailed ballot election. And we had a report back on Janin Acres, Quail Valley Sphere of Influence, which we did follow up with a meeting between the county, the city representatives, special district representatives, to discuss Janin Acres Sphere of Influence change, reported on the audit. Then other activities, we attended, your staff attended several meetings. I attended 3 meetings with the Montecito Water, Sanitary, and Fire District to review forming a community services district. The Montecito Association was involved in that. Met with the Santa Barbara County Grand Jury, met with officials from Solvang, San Ynez, CSD, County, and LAFCO, as well as landowners within Janin Acres to look at the sphere of influence change. And held numerous meetings with the City of Lompoc, Mission Hills CSD, County Planning and Development on sphere revisions that have been requested by the City of Lompoc. And we are still in the process of preparing or getting the application submitted with a map and legal description, and looking at an MOA between the city and the county Board of Supervisors. And to be honest with you, they are not even close as far as the discussions, as far as what the city of Lompoc wants and what the county planning and development department is and is proposing. And it may end up going to the county Board of Supervisors, but it also requires that we have a complete application. And as you know or may not know, there is a property tax exchange process that needs to be approved by the county and by the Lompoc City Council, agreeing to the exchange of property tax revenues. And then if there's an MOA, that would also need to be prepared before it even gets to LAFCO. So I'm not sure that that is anywhere close to being approved. And then I conducted orientation meetings with newly elected and or appointed commissioners. And follow-up to plans for 2020 will be continuing. We're reviewing at least 5 annexation reorganization proposals that have been submitted and will be presented to you in the next few months. We're looking at several independent special district municipal service reviews and sphere of influence revisions that will also be completed in 2020. And then there are several, actually the remainder of the special districts, the dependent special districts I've outlined for you, including the Laguna County Sanitation District and several districts. There looks like there's 6 or 12 or 13 special districts that we need to take a look at. And these are county service areas that are governed by the County Board of Supervisors and county staff. And they have many countywide functions that will be completed and reviewed. And the direction that the commission has given to your executive officer is that I review the questionnaires that are submitted to each of the agencies and asking them if there have been any changes in their general plans for cities, capital improvement plans, sewage treatment plans, expansions, water issues, and ask them if they believe there should be any changes to the sphere of influence, or if they want me to update the municipal service review to bring those up to date. And there's been several of those that have been processed in the past 2 or 3 years. So we're on a 5-year rotation, and we're getting close to starting again. It's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. When you finish at one end, you start over again at the beginning. But these municipal service reviews are very informative. And one thing we're looking at is making sure that each of the districts has a website. And that's something that some districts don't have, and it's some thing that they need to do, I believe, by the end of this year or next 2021. So I'm available to answer any questions. This probably went on a little bit long, but I think it's informative to the commission to go back and review your accomplishments in 2019 and look forward to an equally active 2020. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The municipal service reviews, they can be, I think there's some discretion. They can be very broad or very narrow. But I was intrigued by what you said, that it is an opportunity to upgrade the processes by at least requiring a website. It might also be an opportunity to help educate some of the smaller districts about their responsibilities, because board members get appointed and then they don't really even understand. So anything we could do even to hand things out, to let them know, to say, you've received this information and these are procedures you should be following.
No, I agree. And sometimes it's very difficult to contact, particularly some of the smaller districts. Cemetery districts, for instance, meet maybe once every 4 times a year, once every quarter. And so when I do that, even when I send out the billings for the LAFCO budget, it's hard to tell if I have the right person, if the general manager is the same, if the board president is the same, because they usually change, every January. General manager's not so much, but the general manager, can be a contract employee. But it is, I think, a good opportunity to educate, particularly the special districts and the cities for that matter. I think the cities are more familiar, but the special districts, I think, is an opportunity. And, I would not have a problem appearing at the chapter meeting of the Special Districts Association, which I've given presentations in the past to that organization, and they found it very helpful. So I think it's an opportunity that we should take
I have
advantage
been extremely active over my entire term of being a commissioner to encourage special districts, in particular as a new member comes, to get out their MSR, their current MSR, look at it and read it. I'm not sure I've made really good groundwork with it, but no, I constantly am beating that drum.
Well, yeah, thank you. I did attend recently the Special Districts Association, and some of these smaller districts, they don't attend, and so whatever way we have just to educate, because and clearly the cemetery districts are an example. They just don't always know what their responsibilities are, and I don't know how, what more we can do, but many people seem to think it's the Board of Supervisors, and so part of our job is to say it really isn't. And nobody likes to hear that.
Yeah, the cemetery districts, although they're independent, are appointed by the Board of Supervisors, and so I don't think they really understand that part of it.
Yeah, and we can't really unappoint. It has to,
Right.
complaints go to the grand jury, and it's a very gray area and very difficult one because it isn't clear.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Stark?
I'm not a huge proponent of assuming responsibility for what that probably the agency lawyers and general managers' responsibility is to make sure that their agencies comply with the Brown Act and other stuff. Wouldn't hurt to remind them. I think what we really need to get is to make sure something that was at a LAFCO conference, I think a couple of years ago, when they said make sure that you know and then there's up-to-date information about who is responsible for what service in the particular geographical area, so that if there's an emergency, that people know who to contact, who's responsible for what. And, even better if they have online mapping. But I think that would be a critical thing to make sure the agencies have that up-to-date information.
Yeah, I think one of the things that happens with it is we're entering into our third cycle for this now. Right. Right. And so it's something that's done infrequently, every 5 years. And so as you're doing it, I think that people have interest in it, but it quickly goes by the wayside. And then as you change over directors at districts and stuff, it continues to change. So that's why I encourage them just annually, maybe at your first meeting of the year, get it out, read it. This is what we are supposed to do. How are we doing? Kind of do a mini survey yourself. Yes, Commissioner Freeman.
I have one question and one kind of request. First, the request is related to the municipal service review process. So while I was at the LAFCO conference, I attended a session that was like a panel discussion, actually, that was about municipal service reviews. And one of the most fascinating things that was coming out of that was the idea that the goal of them, in some sense, is to get the sphere of influence updates for the various districts, but that the municipal service review process itself is very open-ended in how it can be performed. And that one of the things that seemed very important to both what I felt we needed to get in order to be able to really understand the sphere of influences, but also as far as being able to really help the service distribution within the county would be to have municipal service reviews that are looking at how a service is being distributed even to places that currently do not have districts, cities, or anything that we are currently looking at. And so I don't know what the extent to which we have a process to look at, for example, who is in charge of either sewer or septic or the lack thereof in all the different regions, or if we are only going to be looking at within the boundaries of existing established districts. But if we could look at how is sewer / septic / nothing being handled, I would love to see that.
I think that's a good point. And the county dependent districts that serve mainly the unincorporated areas provide a lot of these services. And so we'll be going through that municipal service review and sphere of influence update for districts like for instance, the Laguna County Sanitation District, County Fire and some other areas that many times if the areas are annexed to cities, then they are detached from these special districts. But there are a number of districts that really replace the city in the terms of what services they provide. And I'm thinking of, in San Luis Obispo County, the Los Osos Community Services District, which provides sewer service. I hear a grumble in the back of me here. But, they replace in many instances the cities in, providing municipal service to unincorporated areas. So it's very interesting. People don't realize that.
Well, those are cases where we have a dependent district that's actually handling it. Now, it might be that I just misunderstood something, but for example, Ballard, as far as something like handling a sanitation district, my understanding is that there's nothing that is currently there. Am I misunderstanding that? Like, is there a dependent district that somehow technically? Yeah, so in order to really get an understanding in my mind of how the sphere of influences of all of these surrounding districts that actually are handling things like sanitation would be actually how they should be managed. We would need to know, for example, the fact that, like, to what extent does Ballard need this kind of service? To what extent does Ballard not currently have the service? What are Ballard's options? And so looking at all of the different areas that are between all of the current dependent districts, cities, anything that we currently have, in order to see how a particular urban service is either being handled or not being handled at all seems important. But and then just one quick question is just sometimes people seem to think that it is coming up, and then I'm actually maybe it's not supposed to happen until 5 years after. But I'm on the Alta Vista Community Service District, and do we have an MSR coming up, or I was kind of under the impression that we might, and then it's not on this list, but.
You do have, the MSR was coterminous with the district initially when the district was formed. And then, we waited until the utility user tax was approved so that the, district could provide services. And then, we had a discussion that it was at a special election, which I thought was combined with the 2018 election, general election. And so it said 12 months basically after the utility user tax. So you do have a municipal service review. And my direction on that is to identify, I had actually sent a letter to your general manager asking for a list of services that the Isla Vista CSD is providing. And so I need to get that list so that I can see, how they're being financed and the area that they're being provided in. And, if there is a need to extend those services beyond the services that were included in AB3 at the time that the district was formed to a more significant list of CSD services generally, which can, community services, district services, which can include, as almost anything that a city can provide with the exception of planning and land use.
I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to drag this into like an extended conversation about that. I was just verifying that whether it was coming up, because you had a list of ones that were coming up and it wasn't on that list. And so,
right.
Yeah.
Commissioner Stark?
My impression is, I've got the author of the statute sitting with it 2 feet from me. My impression is that AB3, in fact, has a specific, unique provision that says that there is going to be a review of the services by us at some point to determine what power should be latent, which should remain active, and as Mr. Hood says, implicitly whether any power should be added to the community services district at that time, and that'll come up in due course. Is that right?
The list of active services is one thing that I wanted to identify, because anything else would be a latent service that is not being provided actively or financed by the utility user tax or by funds from UCSB. And those would need to come back to LAFCO if they're not being actively provided to get, to reinstitute those at some point. So I think it would help identify for the district what services could be provided but are not actively being provided at this time that were authorized by AB3, and any additional services that would be requested of LAFCO to add.
So I'm under the impression from that the bill text had that the LAFCO review is something that was going to happen between the application process and the election that formed the district in order to determine all those things. And so my understanding of what was in the bill text is that that was all satisfied. But
it was all satisfied because we authorized every service that was necessary.
So I don't think there is another review that needs to happen.
Well, I
from
think the
perspective
municipal
of-
service review would be the next step. Yeah.
Yeah, I suggested we have the council review the language of the statute. I think my reading of it is pretty straightforward.
My recollection is consistent with Shane's, is that the issue, at least at the public hearings, came up of what about these other community needs? And so I think what we came to the conclusion of is, number one, we want to concentrate on the things that Isla Vista needs the most first. We don't want too large of a breadth so that we don't get them right. But recognizing that there was other needs, and I will say that there was one other part of, at least from my viewpoint, why to start off small but give the option of other things in the future was to infringe upon the rights and responsibilities of LAFCO to the minimal extent necessary to further the community's need. So I think LAFCO's continued participation is really a necessary part of that.
Mr. Hood, if I can ask a question, please. I need some clarification. To fine-tune what exactly the responsibility will be and measured in the future, we need an MSR.
Right, and that was the intention of the legislation too, that we do need a
So
municipal service
when
review.
will that be done? Or when is it due? So that we can move forward and know how they're going to be evaluated going forward.
Well, we started out, I sent the letter to general manager, and so I want to follow up on that and get back to you with a schedule, because we need to identify the services that are being provided and, what services are going to be latent. And so we can get back to you within the next 2 to 3 months, I would think.
Well, I'd kind of like to have you get back to us sooner than later to be able to tell us what we have going forward.
Okay.
I don't want to wait here till we receive a letter response as to what they're doing, when we may have an understanding of what they should be doing. So I would hope that you calendar this next month, so at least we have an update
Okay.
on the communication and where we're going forward, so we're on the same page.
And we do have a board member on our commission that can help me with that process too.
Yeah, I'll make one comment on the slides that you had where you picked out MSR and SOI updates. Was there a reason that you picked out just those certain districts? Because normally what we've done in the past is to group them. You do the sanitary districts at one time and water districts and cemetery districts and do them all at one time. So I think this list was a little misleading in the sense that it would be expanded quite a bit.
Yeah, that's the list of the dependent districts. So those are the county districts that we haven't looked
Right,
at
and the
yet.
CSAs, right.
Yeah, CSAs and,
Right.
county fire and Laguna County Sanitation District. So
So
we
the-
also have some remaining independent districts that we need to look at as
Right,
well.
so the slide before that, when it says special districts, that includes everybody, and you usually start them by group, by the service
We've done
that
it
they
that
provide?
way.
Yeah.
We've grouped the, for instance, in Goleta, you have 2 sanitary districts, and so we'd look at both the Goleta West and the Goleta sanitary districts. And then we could do it by community as well, that, in Carpinteria, if you have districts that, a water district, a fire district, and a sanitary district, we could look at all of those. And so, we just haven't grouped all of the sanitary districts from the whole county into one MSR because, we need to get some kind of logical relationship between the geographic area that they serve.
Right,
So that was my approach.
yep, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, we'll move on to commissioner announcements. Hearing none, move on to executive officer comments.
The only comment that I have is that several of our two commissioners and legal counsel will be attending the UCLA Planning and Land Use Conference in LA on January 24th, so that's coming up. And I'm hoping that they can get handouts, or I can get handouts, and they can bring hard copies back, that we can make copies of that material for the commission to review. It's something that your commission has budgeted for in the past, and I sent out a letter asking for interest, and we did get Commissioner Waterfield and Commissioner Geyer and Bill Dillon will be attending, and so they can report back to us.
That's it. Okay. Now that I lost my script, I guess we're ready to adjourn the meeting to February 6th in Santa Maria. Thank you.